Okay, well, so good afternoon, gentlemen of the press. As you are aware, as at yesterday, 2nd of July 2020, Lagos State has recorded over 10,639 cases of COVID-19. Of this amount, we've discharged about 1,600 at our isolation center, and we're aware also that about 5,400 have all recovered at the community also within that period. Given all of the community-based care treatment that we've been deploying, but regrettably too, we've seen about 177 deaths within the same entire COVID-19 period. We continue to take very seriously the fact that we are the epicenter of this coronavirus pandemic in Nigeria. For us in Lagos, it remains a constant call for action, a strong reminder of the responsibility that is placed on all of us to be aggressive, to be proactive in all of our responses, and to continue to show leadership as a subnational. In line with our promise to wrap up the process of testing, we have now registered 7 private laboratories to supplement our existing testing efforts. These labs are the Thin Lab, the Cleaner Laxent Lab, the Medbury Medical Services, Total Medical Services, O2 Medical Services, Biologics Medical Services, and 54G. We're also constantly reviewing our testing strategy to adapt to the evolving nature of the pandemic. Going forward, there will be 2 categories of people who qualify for testing of the COVID-19 in Lagos State. That is, the first category will be those who need to be tested, who fit the case definition for testing and therefore actually require testing. This category of people will continue to receive free treatment that will be at the expense of the state government in our public laboratories, and everyone who meets this case definition for the COVID-19 will be tested. What this means is that if you are showing symptoms of the infection, or if you have had contact with a confirmed case, or if you have exposed yourself in a location where a confirmed case has also been reported, you are entitled to a free testing by the Lagos State government. However, there's a second category, that those who do not meet this case definition, but they want to be tested. They want to be tested for various reasons. They want to be tested for curiosity. They might also want to be tested to meet other requirements. Maybe they want to travel outside of the country, or they want to return to work. We know that there are some offices, there are some organizations that are just for the need to want to determine the status of their staff. They want them to get tested. This category of people will have access to the testing by one of our newly accredited private testing labs. But this will also be at a cost that will be duly communicated by these laboratories. But however, the state government has that oversight function to ensure that we continue to control and ensure that standards are maintained, and the biosecurity data that comes out from all of this testing are also kept, at the state level without any compromise of any sort. And I think this will sort of like ensure that once all of these protocols are put in place, we probably would see an increase in the number of positive cases because of the amount of testing that we will be doing. We're currently conducting over 1,000 tests a day, so we might see that number go up in terms of with the additional 7 labs that we said we have now, so which will make our total both state and private labs to about 12 or so, or 13. Let me also make it clear that testing by non-accredited facility is totally prohibited, and it will bring the full weight of the law to bear if we found any laboratory that has not been fully accredited, by a farmer or the public health officers as being violating the law. The full wrath of the law will come on such laboratory. We're also similarly scaling up our capacity at our isolation center. I'm sure some of you were with us last week Sunday when we commissioned the seventh in the series of isolation center. We had a 150-bed isolation center at the mainland infectious disease hospital, Yaba, which was donated by the consortium of private organizations called the COVID, led by the CBN governor. This new center has, like I said, 150-bed capacity, and it brings to 7 total number of our dedicated red level isolation center. Let me also assure you that we're also identifying additional isolation centers on the way. I think in another week or so, we'll also might be commissioning another one, and we're also working with the federal government and other private entities. We want to ensure that we have more than enough capacity to manage and treat the new cases when it is inevitable that they come out, and because of the increase in testing that we will be doing in the days and the weeks ahead. We want to use this to also thank the coalition of all of the private sectors who have joined us in this regard. Dear Lagosians, as you are aware, this week the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 also issued some updates on the easing of the lockdown. The PTF announced that President Buhari has approved an extension with minor modifications in the ease of lockdown for another 4 weeks. And they gave us those deadlines that will run till July 27, 2020. Lagos State, we're subnational, we will continue to take our guidance and advisory from Mr. President has been put together under the PTF task force. Let me also recap the highlights of the modified guidelines concerning what is permitted and what is not permitted in Lagos at this time. The nationwide curfew, which still remains in force between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. daily, will continue to remain in force. Places of worship will continue to remain closed in Lagos for some more time in the future. All social and event centers, social clubs will also continue to remain closed for now. However, there are some conversations around verifiable trustees at governing board in some clubs, and they are trying to meet very strict and stringent guidelines that has been released. And from time to time, we're supervising them, we're checking them, and as the incident commander, when the time is ripe, we will let you know if they can also be open. But we're working with them, and we're making sure that their premises are in compliance with all of the guidelines that we have. So what will happen is only public places that will be in possession of a valid provisional safety clearance letter that will be issued by the Safety Commission will be permitted to open at that time. We're working very closely to when that time will be. And in addition, additional guidelines around hygiene, physical distancing measures will also, all of those protocols will be in place. Let me also emphasize that all bars, day and night clubs, cinemas, game arcades, beaches, spas will continue to remain closed. Eateries and restaurants, they will continue to open for normal takeaway service that we have. Please, we'll continue to encourage them. We say that there should not be in-dining. We're still keeping to that. They're still prohibited. And we have arrested a few defaulters in this line, and we'll be coming harder on even some of them. And we will not stop we'll probably even have to shut down and close down some of those eateries or restaurants who are disobeying those rules. We will not say that they should not sell. They can sell, but as much as possible, that has to all be taken away so that we can keep, the era of physical distancing at all of these places. All schools and educational institutions will remain closed. We continue to support online teaching of curriculum during this period. However, students in the transitional classes who have the mandatory public examinations ahead of them will be permitted to resume for revision classes and, of course, for the examination. All educational establishments are to follow the established public health guidelines and protocols for the reopening. We just finished a very long meeting with various stakeholders in the education sector. That is what has kept us for the past 2 hours. And so for the avoidance of doubt, students impacted by these directives will be in the transitional class of JS3, SS3, and Tech 3, the teaching, the technical education schools 3 as well. The commencement date for this will be from Monday, August the 3rd, 2020. Monday, August the 3rd. For JS3, Tech 3 will be the first that will start. And for for SS3 and Tech 3 will be the one that will start. But for JS3, we'll wait for another 1 or 2 weeks and we'll see how we take in the first set of Tech 3 and SS3 before they now subsequently will open. This permitted opening will apply only to day schooling. No boarding activity of any sort are permitted at this time. They are all day schooling. Schools authority are expected to spend this period between now and August the 3rd to be able to prepare themselves well and get the rightful directives from our Ministry of Education and the Quality Assurance Office under the Ministry of Education. They have continued to work with them and they will continue to work with them in that order so that they can prepare all of the infrastructure, the protocols that are essential, both at the public and private schools. Both at the public and private schools will make sure that they all fully comply with all of these directives. However, our tertiary institutions will continue to enjoy their online academic activities, which are at various stages as we speak. I know that some of them are also conversing with us to see if some final year students will be allowed to have physical opening. That modality, we're still working on it with them, but the online teaching that had started at the tertiary institutions will continue to happen. All the restrictions applying to mass gathering will continue to remain in force. That is, gathering that for funeral or for social events, not more than 20% are still in place. Opening times for government and private offices, markets, supermarkets, eateries are still as expressed before now. In our public service, we will not be making any changes at this time, but we encourage our staff working from home to continue to improve themselves through the various learning management system. We have introduced various learning management systems at our public offices and the portals are live. We will continue to encourage them to use this and we'll have them enrolled so that they can improve their capability. Training have also started online. We've made those payments and we've opened those portals. We'll continue to encourage our public officers that are at home to continue to use this channel. The head of service will also be issuing further circulars in this regard. Let me also now finally identify a few other moderations that we have. There's been conversations around hairdressing salons, and barbing salons. I think it's important that some of them have been accredited by the Safety Commission and will begin to allow them to open. But it will be opening on appointment basis, meaning that between the hours when they open, they must have had an appointment. For you to come in at 3 o'clock or at 12 o'clock, you must have had a prior appointment with your hairdressing salon. And we'll enjoy them to still continue to keep. They will be keeping not more than 50% of their total floor space. at any given time. Also, sports facilities and recreational parks in residential estates only. Sports facility and recreational parks in residential estates only will also be permitted to open at this time. And I'm employed that there will be a maximum of 20 at any of those gatherings at any time. This is, we believe, is to promote well-being and wellness of our citizens. Resident associations are enjoined to ensure strict compliance to these guidelines, and public health officers to ensure that people take full responsibility. The federal government, as you're all aware, has approved the reopening of local airports, especially the Lagos and Abuja domestic airports will be open for domestic operation from Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. I imagine that our the Federal Ministry of Health and the Lagos State Ministry of Health will be putting together, they've started conversation, adequate health port protocols to ensure that compliance at these airports are top-notch, and our Commissioner for Health is also aware of this. Everything that we need to do to support FAN and ensuring that the protocols at the airports are kept will also be guidely followed through. We'll also want to re-emphasize that our registration portal remains for businesses that have getting all sort of provisional licenses will continue to remain lasgsafetyregistration.com, www.lasgsafetyreg.com. We'll continue to advise that our people use this portal for registration sake, and they are not meant to pay any form of money. This registration and all of the inspections are free of charge. Nobody is meant to pay for anything. No officer of government is meant to collect any form of fee or charge or levy, even when they come to your premises. Please, these are all done free of charge. You should not pay anybody for any service, and would advise that if anybody do ask for money, please scale this up, and please let's make all of the reportage to the various government offices. At this phase of the evolution of this pandemic in our society, I cannot continue but to re-emphasize that personal responsibility is now more important than ever before, not only for our own self-protection, but also for the protection of our loved ones and other people that are around us. The mask usage is mandatory at public places. We are also asking officers and businesses and commercial premises to refuse entry to any persons who is not wearing their face mask. And in line with the Presidential Task Force Directive on no mask, no entry, no mask, no service, enforcement agencies will from the coming days and week charge defaulters to court as the period of grace is over. And in the weeks ahead, by next week, we will certainly encourage the security operatives to arrest a few people, and we'll be charging them to court just to demonstrate that we're serious about this no mask, no service, no mask, no entry policy, especially in public environments. Lagosians will continue to wash your hands regularly. We'll continue to emphasize this. We have provided a lot of hand washing locations within our markets and a few other public offices and public places. Will ensure that you maintain social distancing, especially when you're in public environment. On our part as a government, we'll continue to do everything possible to protect and to uphold the health and the well-being of our citizens. You can see that the evidence of the commitment we're putting into scaling up testing and isolation capacity, and we'll ensure that we're also enforcing all of these things. I'm sure you've seen that our percentage, are dropping in terms of the mobility. It's because of all of our other interventions around ensuring that we'll wrap up, issues around providing oxygen at our various isolation centers, and quick response at identifying people with respiratory issues when they occur. And with regards to enforcement, we'll be increasing our focus and our efforts in this area. As you know, any guideline or any directive is as effective to the extent of how many or how well people comply with these directives. The best laws and guidelines are of no use if people disregard these rules and laws for whatever reasons, and we will not allow that to happen in Lagos. Lagos, I'm sure you know, belongs all of us, and we must all join hands to ensure that we defeat this virus completely. I'd like to encourage and remind us that the hotline for COVID-19 remains 08000 Corona. It's a 24/7 hotline, and you can always reach us on this line. It is also advisable that we'll continue to use you gentlemen of the press as advocates. You are partners with us, and ensure that please you will communicate effectively, transparently, and at all times to our citizens. We'll continue to express our deepest gratitude for the various hard work you are doing with us, but more importantly, for our medical staff, our medical personnel who are the frontline workers. We cannot thank them enough. Our laboratory personnel, our contact tracing staff, our support staff at the call center, our drivers, our cleaners, our decontaminators, waste management workers, monitoring teams at the various state and local governments. All this work will amount to nothing if we do not all work together and end this pandemic once and for all. For us in Lagos, we're committed and will continue to do everything possible to ensure that we keep Lagos safe and sound for all of us. Thank you very much for this address. We're now open for questions or clarification, if any. Thank you.
If you can take questions now.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Adedoja Salam Adeni. I work with TVC News. I have a couple of questions, especially for Prof. Getting COVID twice is against the laws of immunity and immunology. Now we've heard that some people are infected, that are infected, are getting reinfected. We want to know why this is so. Then another question is the incubation period of COVID-19, as we all know, stands between 14 days. Now we heard that it's now 4 days. And even if the patient has an underlying ailment, the patient might die within that 4 days. We want to know what has changed if that 14 days of incubation period still stands. Then someone who got infected with COVID said that she tried getting into the state isolation center, and then there wasn't any bed space. I would like to know if Lagos is already overwhelmed with this pandemic, and is it true that in every 5 person, 2 has COVID? I mean, they are infected with COVID. How far is this? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Tayo Oloruyomi from Radio Lagos Eko FM. My question is based on the measures the state government is taking to further find a homegrown solutions to COVID-19 in the states. Ní ti Yorùbá sà, mo fẹ́ mọ ìgbésẹ̀ tí ìjọba fẹ́ gbé lórí àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ tí ò sí nílùú yìí tí wọ́n máa padà wá láti wá ṣe nǹkan tí wọ́n fẹ́ ṣe ní ilé ìwé nígbà tí wọ́n bá wọlé pátápátá báyìí.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Titilayo Abero from Channel TV, sir. I would like to know if you are comfortable with the reopening of domestic flights on Wednesday, because if you are comfortable with the reopening of domestic flights, because you know, Lagos is the epicenter, and with that, wouldn't it increase the number of cases that we're already dealing with? And again, you mentioned that those in GS3 and SS3 would be allowed to resume, but you'll be starting with the SS3 students. What about the students in the pupils in primary 6 that are expected to move into GS1? What are your plans for them? Because some security officials harassing them, even when they're the only ones. Thank you, sir.
That will be all, sir.
Thank you very much. I did around somebody getting COVID twice. I think, like you said, the Commissioner for Health will answer that. But I think what I've learned, because I've also done a lot of literature, is, I think there's always like a second bout of it. The virus is a load. It goes up, it comes down, right? It's always a function of the level of immunity that we also built around it. So it's also not out of place that, after a while, the load will probably not be at the same level that it came the first time, but it's like a relapse or something like that. If I'm using, a layman's understanding to it, because I've read the literature, around that. So it's really a function of people, how individual people, how your body system responds to things like this. But I think the signs of it, maybe the commissioners can explain it. But I've read somewhere that based on individuals, you probably can get a relapse of it, and it can also come back in small, traces. But the viral load might not get to the same level it was, as the first time. Incubation period now being 4 days. I think, if you watch and if you read a lot of literature with it, the 14 days period is really from incubation to when you also now come out of it. But there'll be a strike time. There'll be a time in which the level will be so severe, the intensity will be so much. Maybe that's what the 4 or 5 days is. But the commissioner will also speak to that. But if you also have listened to people that have had the virus, right? A few times they'll say they do not have anything, but there'll be a time in which for 4 days, for 5 days, you might just feel intensity of something, and thereafter you just probably, close down it. When it starts, your body, it's foreign. So your body will first get to react to it. Then there'll be a time in which it sort of like take a better part of you, and your body fights back, and because it's like a sine wave. There'll be a peak period, and it will also now come down again. But like I said, this is only non-medical explanation. This is just my own understanding as incident manager learning it. But the science will speak, to it. Around somebody coming to isolation center and not having a space, I'll find that very strange, because there's never been a time where we're completely out of bed spaces. However, we might actually be full in a particular one, but we might have spaces in other one. So that person you're talking about maybe was just a particular location. But because we do a full case management profile, right? Especially if there are people that we're bringing in. We know what the case profile will be at Jaba, for example, as compared to the one that will be at Oniko, as compared to the one that will be at Landmark or Akidingbi or any of these other isolation locations. So, so when they're bringing people in, you know where the numbers are, what is the level of intensity, and so they can direct them. But maybe that person just walked into a place and they were expecting to be admitted, and they said, no, there's no space. But we have, like you said, we just opened another one. Right around all of our locations, we've never got into a stage where we cannot admit people, right? But we're also managing, at the community, as we mentioned. Tayo said, when or how are we going to be doing the homegrown solution, around COVID? I think that is out already. I think, we have created a whole lot of our own local solution, and analysis of how the virus have been moving, in our own space, So maybe the only thing is, maybe you are talking about maybe an homegrown vaccine. You probably don't have an homegrown vaccine yet, but we'll have an homegrown case management. We'll have an homegrown epidemiological, analysis of it that we've monitored, that we've checked, and that we're tracking, that is domesticated, for us in Lagos. So we have a sense, around how it evolves. We have a sense around how it moves around, and we have a sense around where it's most prevalent. So, all of that is homegrown, But in terms of, an homegrown vaccine, everybody's still working on that, as we speak. But we've designed an homegrown cocktail of solution, an homegrown cocktail of treatment that have worked, and people have come in and they've gotten well and they've gotten home and they've gone back home, rather. If I'm comfortable with opening, or if Lagos is comfortable with opening of the domestic airport, well, so at some point, like we've said several times, there are three things that we're dealing with. We're dealing with an health issue, we're dealing with an economic issue, we're also dealing with a security issue. So at some point in time, we need to look at each one of them, and we need to measure the risk. So FAN have not said that they are opening 16 airports, for example. They are opening only 2, right? And it's only Lagos and Abuja, right? So and like in my address now, like I said, FAN and the Lagos State Ministry of Health and the federal health officials, are working together to also scale up their public health or entry point health analysis again. So I'm sure when people are coming in, you still need to fill all of your forms, where you're going to, where you're coming from, your telephone number, your address, and all. So it's like we're going to start a whole lot of case management, or contact tracing again, so that they know what you have. But is a very thin balance, between economy and all of it. So Lagos continue to remain, the economic nerve center. So there's some hurting that we've had economically. So they brought up a lot of protocols. If you see the pictures, the seating arrangements, the arrangements inside the aircraft, and all of that. So let's test it. Let's see what it is. Let's keep it small, right? I'm sure it won't be all flights. Let's keep it small. Let's even just see what the response will be in the first couple of days. How well are people, going to be obeying all of these things? And then, at some point, some of these things needs to happen. So it's just a gradual and an ease release of lockdown. So it's not something that cannot be done, but let's see how our citizens and our people respond, to these things. Well, okay, so primary 6 to GS1, because in the public school we know everybody in the primary 6. We know all of them, right? These are our own pupils, and by extension, they all get admitted into our public secondary schools, also in GS1. So we are using what we call a continuous assessment to determine, how they graduate into GS1. It's really just to still slow down that risk factor, and manage. You don't want to open all the doors, and manage all of these things, in a measured form. In a measured form. Some will come in September and all of it. So we just want to be sure that both the teaching staff, the non-teaching staff, and the pupils themselves are ready and are able to adapt to this new way of life. So that's why we don't want to just open the whole lead and say, but like I said, we know who they are, we know where they are, we've done continuous assessment for them, and we know that what kind of secondary schools we also need to get them prepared for. So all of that are records that are in our system and ready to take care of them. Security officers, if you have one person in a vehicle, I think that would just be unfair. If you have one person driving, the person is not at risk to anyone, and I imagine that the person should really be left, in his or her car, alone. I'm not sure that constitutes a risk to anyone, and I'm sure maybe security officers there are just overzealous. I think just let us communicate what there's something that makes sense. If it is one person driving a car, and he hasn't come out of his car, he's not at risk to himself or is not at risk to others. And I'm sure that there should not be any form of arrest, any form of intimidation to such an individual. So we'll let the operators, the security personnel be aware of this. That shouldn't happen. Thank you. Commissioner, do you have one or two things to? I've answered.
Well, there's nothing much more to add to those questions. As Mr. Governor said, from the moment you're exposed to the virus till the virus establishes itself in your body, it's called the incubation period. That period can last anything from 2 to 5 or 6 days. When it has established itself in your body, then you start to secrete the virus. And you can secrete the virus anything from 12 to 14 days based on our research here. And at that point, your body's immune system has defeated the virus and cleared the virus out of your system. After that point, we call it the recovery period or the convalescent period. Occasionally, at the end of that virus,
go on.
The end of that period of virus is not a finite point. It can go down and come up a little bit, go down and come up a little bit before it fades away. That's why you hear sometimes that you test positive again after we've tested negative. But if you keep testing, you'll find that eventually the body clears the virus and you've fully recovered from the infection. Can you catch it again? Again, it goes against the principles of immunology that once you've been exposed to a certain pathogen, your body is now has developed resistance to it. So it can happen, nothing is impossible, but it's highly unlikely.
So there are exceptions that are against being the rules. That's the lesson there. Thank you very much. Thank you.